Good morning or good evening. Nacho and I are doing our regular Wednesday morning voiceover, and you guys love seeing him so much, and he wants to say hi. Okay, for today's projects, we're going to be working with a bunch of wood scraps that I had in my stash. I've already cut these down to various sizes and sanded all the edges smooth. And we're going to do several projects with these. We're also going to break it up with some regular thrift flips. To begin with, I am going to paint all of these with 2 coats, front, sides, back, everything with 2 coats of DIY crinoline. That's kind of going to be our theme for all of today. So we're going to be using this color a lot. And I also decided to give you guys a list of products that I will be using in each project. So for this first project, we're going to use the Bibelot mold, crinoline. We're going to use the Christmas postage paper from Roycyled, ephemeral type stamp, and several other projects or products. Now, I have also pre-made these molds with the Bibelot. I used a different product. I used the Durham's wood putty with this, and it's a little fragile, see? So I had to come up with a way to use these, and we'll probably do more with this later. This was my first try, so I wanted to see how it worked, and now I know, how stable they are and everything and what I can do with them. So we are going to be using the Christmas postage decoupage paper. This was from the Roycyled last release, and I just haven't got to use it enough. I love all these postage. For this first one, I wanted to get the deer in a different angle, I guess you'd say. So I cut it out separately, and then we're just going to piece the rest of the stuff around it. I did not pre-paint these molds. They're already a pretty light color, and I think it'll go just fine with the paper, and the colors will still be pretty vibrant, which these colors are kind of muted anyway, so that worked out good. And I am being sure I'm using the Fusion decoupage and transfer gel. I think I've just decided I like the thickness of it. There are times when I will use the liquid patina, so I'm still using either or, but for this project, I chose to go with the thicker decoupage medium. So I also wanted to be sure and put that, what is that, like a medallion that has the 25 on it, and I placed it where I wanted it. By cutting the paper apart, I'm just able to use the elements that I want. For the other two, I'll use them like they are. They fit perfectly. But for this one, I'm just kind of tearing and piecing and making a collage, basically, to get all the pieces that I want onto this little bauble. And I do like to wet my decoupage paper before I lay it down. I just feel like that helps with any wrinkles, but there wasn't any wrinkles on this anyway. So I did this one, and I did the 2 others, and then the one I had to do a little bit of repair on that I broke, but that was no issue. I just used some Tite Bond glue, put it on both sides, let it sit for a few minutes, and then I decoupaged the paper right over it. Once the decoupage paper was dry, everything was held together really well. And I sanded off all the edges very lightly before moving on to the next step. Before we glue these down, we're going to embellish these wood blocks. I've picked 3 of the thicker ones that can be used as shelf sitter, and now I'm going to use the ephemeral type stamp, and I'm going to use different colors ink, coordinating colors. For that first one, I use Stone Gray. This one's going to be China Blue because there's a little bit of blue in that ornament. And then we're going to use red for the last one. I'm going to use Titebond glue and glue all these down. And I decided that they needed a little bit of ribbon to go with them. So I also cut a small piece of ribbon and put it underneath the mold to make it look like it was hanging from the top of our shelf sitter. Before doing that, though, I did paint all the tops and went around the edges of all the molds with some antique gold rub and buff. I know I use rub and buff a lot, but I just really love this gold color, and it's so easy to apply the rub and buff, and it dries fast, and I actually kind of like the smell of it too. Does that make me kind of weird? The crinoline paint is DIY, which is a clay-based paint, and it does need to be sealed, so I sealed the blocks with some clear wax by Fusion, and then I also went over it with a little bit of the aging wax just to give it a little bit more dimension and depth. If you want to try to make your own projects just like these, I do have that supply list for you, and all of the paints and products are available on my website, susieonthefarm.com. I think these turned out so beautiful. What do you guys think? We are going to do a regular thrift flip next. I'm going to try to work some of these in just so I don't get too tired of constant Christmas. So here's the supply list for project number 2. We're going to be using Fusion paint, and this one, which is a all-in-one, has a built-in sealer. We're also going to use the olive crest mold and air dry clay. So I picked up this, it's called a pencil holder. I think it's Hearth and Hand, which comes from Target, if I'm not mistaken. But this reminded me of a sugar mold, so we're going to fix it up and embellish it. It's really dry wood, so I am going to put these little, I'm going to call these swags from the olive crest mold. You have two opposite ones, and I'm just dusting it with cornstarch. That will help the clay release really easy from the mold. Then I'm going to take some of the IOD air dry clay, push it down into the mold, and I'll use the little micro rim on the mold to remove any of the excess, clean up the edges really good, turn it upside down, and take each side out. I'm going to place them onto this sugar mold is what I'm going to call it, and how I want it. And I'm also going to use that crest, which I believe that's what it's called. It's kind of like a plate or a medallion. I use it all the time. It is my favorite little crest, as you will, and I'm going to put it right over those two holes there. I'll glue everything down with Titebond Quick and Thick. I love this glue. I've glued all my things down with it. I've never had anything come unglued. I did wait till the next morning to paint this one just because I ran out of time. So my molds are completely dry here, so it makes it quite easy to get into all those details. I could have got away with one coat of this paint, and this is Fusion in the color Oakum. This is one of my favorite dark colors, and I just love how it looks. I did end up having to touch up around the molds. I really wanted to use this mercantile stamp, but all of the pieces were just a little too big for my crest there. So instead, I got the apothecary label stamp and made my own little established 1879 to put in the center of that medallion. To finish them off, I'm simply going to take some white paint from Fusion, and this is in the color Casement. It's just a really bright white, and I am going to use a chip brush and just lightly dry brush over the molds just to highlight all those raised parts on it and really make them stand out. And then I will actually dry brush over the entire piece, just very, very lightly, just to give it just a little bit more interest. I had 3 little succulent pots that actually fit perfect in these 3 holes, but you could put just about anything in this, and I love the way it turned out. How beautiful would it be with like 3 white bottle brush trees in there? For project number 3, we're going to go back to Christmas, and we're going to go back to that Christmas postage paper. There are like so many postage stamp like pictures in here, and I love all of them. So we got 3 different ones here, and I have picked out some of the lighter wood pieces, ones that could be hung. So we're going to make ornaments out of these, and I'm going to go back and use the Fusion decoupage and transfer gel and just transfer all these down, and then once it's dry, I'll sand off any of the edges, but most of them fit perfectly. Then I'm going to drill a hole in the top corners of these and run some twine through them. I'll show you a little trick for threading twine because it can unravel and is very difficult to deal with. So I just use some regular tape, wrap it around the end, and I could have actually just, I think, pushed through these holes, but I also have a very long needle. I think it's a embroidery needle or something that I picked up at Walmart years ago, and it is perfect for threading things through small holes, and it just takes out all that frustrating mess that you get with that. I used a little dot of hot glue to make sure that my knots stayed in place. And then I embellished these with just little different ribbons and all coordinating colors. And these turned out so perfect. I ended up making quite a few of these, but how beautiful would it be to have an entire tree with these as the ornaments? I have a very limited amount of these Christmas postage on the website if y'all want to get some of these before they run out. Our last scrap wood project, I'm going to use the same colors. This time I'm going to use the Santa's sleigh mold. I did already have this mold pre-made with some clear resin, but I did not get any of the reindeer made up, so I'm going to just use some clay so I can make this one up right away. First, I'm going to dust it with cornstarch to help release it. I shake all the excess off, and then I'm going to take some IOD air dry clay and be sure and get it in all of his antlers and everything. Clean up the edges with that neat little micro rim, and then be very careful turning it over. I always have trouble removing any animals with small legs or horns or anything. So just be very careful removing, and then you can take your finger, and if you'll wet your finger, it's very easy to fix all those little places, and just be really careful not to break anything. I let him dry overnight, and we are going to use the Oakum color again. This is a fusion paint color, and we're going to go over all the molds before we glue them down. I did do 2 coats just to make sure I covered all that white and clear on those. I also did a few of the little presents to put on with the reindeer, and then once the paint is dry on the molds, I'm going to take some more antique gold rub and buff, and look how it makes this mold come alive. I love it. It's like magic when you do that, and I'm just using my fingertip to very easily highlight all the raised edges on the molds. I kind of feel like Santa Claus gets a little bit lost in this because of all the detail, but I love this mold, and look how beautiful this reindeer. If you cast a bunch of these, you could do so much with these reindeer for Christmas. I also used some of the gold rub and buff to go around all the edges of the wood block. I don't think you could really tell this much in the end, especially after I clear waxed it. It kind of just rubbed it all in, but it's there. It's just a very small, faint detail on these. Again, I am using the Type Bond Quick and Thick glue. This is the strongest glue that I have been able to find. The only thing is in those squeeze bottles there, once you get down to the bottom amount, it is very hard to get your glue out. So just keep that in mind. I just get pretty rough with mine. These made great little shelf sitters. I love the gold accents for Christmas, so I am in love with these. For project number 5, we're going to go back to my farmhouse roots, and we're going to use, I forgot about this paper. This is the Barnyard Masterboard paper. This was from Roycyled's last release, and I think it kind of got lost in all the Christmas designs, but this is one of my favorite, especially with the farm animals and the whole mercantile thing. These are a bunch of labels, it looks like, for different feeds and stuff, and I went through my stash trying to find something that I could put these on, and I remember I had these copper buckets, I guess they are, but these would be so great if you use these on like some tin cans or paint buckets or anything like that that you might have just laying around in your stash. So I had these. Someone had already spray painted them a copper color, and I just had them hanging on my pegboard holding some markers and stuff, and I thought that they would be perfect for these little labels. So to begin with, I'm kind of tearing my paper just to give it a more organic look. I'm not going to be able to get it all the way around my bucket, so I wanted it to have just a, a nice organic edge. I did forget to do the one with the sheep dip, but it looks really good with the cut edges anyway. I'm using the Fusion Decoupage and Transfer Gel, and I'm just going to place these labels right on it. I tried to get them about the right size, but if some of it gets on that lip at the top or the bottom, it's really no big deal because we're going to come back in just a minute and do something with that. And these went on perfect. No wrinkles or anything. I love misting my decoupage paper. It just helps, I guess it causes those fibers to expand, and it makes it very, very easy to rub out any of the wrinkles that may appear. And as you saw, I put 1 coat of the crinoline down underneath these to have a light base to help this decoupage paper really pop. these are all dry, we can move on to the next step. And I really, really love the copper look. This was a little tedious and took me a while, but I took some of the Fusion Copper Metallic. You could also use Pennies from Heaven, DIY Liquid Patina. Both of these are gorgeous copper patina. I went around all of the bottom edge and the top lip on these. Like I said, it took me a minute, but it was quite relaxing, and it was the perfect touch on these. Once that dried, I took a combination of a baby wipe and just a tiny bit of sandpaper, and I distressed these buckets back to show some of the copper underneath. I sealed everything in with another coat of the decoupage and transfer gel, and these have these little hangers. They came with these hangers. I did thrift these. They came with these hangers, but they are so perfect, and I found the perfect little greenery to put in these. But you could actually use these for storage or so many different things. How cute would it be in a farmhouse kitchen with some utensils in them? All right, guys, we have made it to our final project today, and I had a little bit of a fail, but I'm going to show you how I fixed it. I knew I wanted to use the Gloria paint inlay, and I had these two little bamboo cutting boards, and I wanted to try using, I know we can use the clear liquid patina, but I wanted to try to use the dark and decrepit liquid patina because I love the color of it. I did decide that the Gloria paint inlay was basically the same color as the liquid patina, so instead I picked out one that had some color on it from last year's, or maybe it was the year before, but I had it left over anyway. But it didn't work, but I'm going to go ahead and show it to you guys, and then I'm going to show you how I fixed it. So I put a good even layer of the liquid patina down. Look at that color of that liquid patina. I do absolutely love that. I love staining the top of furniture pieces with it as well. And then I wet my inlay. I laid it into the wet liquid patina. I let it dry, and then when I pulled it back, I hated it. I guess it was just too dark underneath. It kind of washed out all the color, and I just didn't like it. It looked dirty and messy. So for the fix, we're going to go back to crinoline. We're going to stick with what we know and what we've been doing in this video. And once it's dry, you can paint right over a paint inlay. All it is just paint. I did kind of smooth it down just a little bit with a baby wipe just to make sure that there wasn't any raised parts on it. And then I gave both my cutting boards 2 coats of the crinoline. For the third coat, I'm going to do another coat, and what I'm going to do is just use my mister bottle to make sure that it is completely even. And I'm going to go back and use that inlay that I wanted to use originally from the Gloria pack. It says, "We wish you a Merry Christmas," and it's such a pretty color, and it goes so well with this crinoline paint. Now, I wet the inlay, I laid it into my wet paint, and then I also used a brayer. And here it is dry. To remove it, you want to re-wet it. I like to get it really good and wet, and then I take a paper towel, kind of dab off all the excess, and then I start pulling, and this did a perfect transfer. There are a few letters where it had just a little bit of light in with it, but I think that actually turned out really good. You couldn't even see the panty line on this, but if you can take a little bit of paint on your brush and just touch that up. I also did this coordinating wreath on another one, and then to seal them in, I used the liquid patina. No, Yeah, this is liquid patina, and I just loaded my brush up and with a very light hand sealed over these after it's completely dry, because you can smear it if you're not careful. I hope that y'all have enjoyed all of today's projects. Let me know what was your favorite down in the comments below. Also, did y'all like the product list that I use on that? Let me know on that as well. That might be something that I continue to do. Hope y'all have a great night, and I will see you next week.